present.
Mr. Chair, this is Julie Hoffman. If Lisa's having microphone issues, I can go ahead and do the attendance to see if we have a quorum present.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Nancy Allen.
Present.
Thank you. Stan Balone. Dave Barry. Benjamin Bitter. Walter Bouchard. Kim Butler. Derek Castaneda.
Present.
Peter Margoliner. Aaron Chavez.
Here.
Beverly Chanowski.
Present.
Kim Connor.
Present.
Michael Denby. Scott Tobias.
Present.
Michelle Kamakawa.
Present.
Robert Forrest.
Present.
Elizabeth Foster. Rhonda Humbles. Hondo Judd. Spencer Camps. Martin Lucero. Heather Colson.
Present.
Kristen Watt.
Present.
Amanda McGinnis.
Present.
JC Porter. Mario Saldamando.
Present.
Megan Sheldon.
Present.
Ramona Simpson.
Present.
Susan Stevens. Ed Stillings.
Here.
Steve Trussell. Christina Hopes. Kai Umeda.
Present.
Thank you.
Sorry, Christina is here.
Excuse me?
Christina is here. I don't know if you heard me.
Oh, great. Thank you. Robert Vandenacker. Michelle Wilson.
Present.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, we do have a quorum.
Great. Thank you very much. In that case, I'll call this meeting to order since the quorum is now present. All members are participating virtually. And just as a reminder, to please mute yourself during presentations or when you're not talking so we don't have feedback. Our second agenda item is an opportunity will be provided to members of the public to provide input through written comment to Air Quality Technical Advisory Committee on items that are not on the agenda that are within the jurisdiction of MAG, or on items on the agenda for discussion but not for action. Members of the public are asked to submit written comments related to this meeting through the MAG website and indicate for which meeting the comment is intended. Comments may be sent at any time leading up to the meeting, but must be received at least 1 hour prior to the posted start time for the meeting. Comments received prior to the deadline will be read aloud during the meeting. Comments must not exceed 3 minutes in length. A total of 15 minutes will be provided for the call of the audience agenda item unless the Air Quality Technical Advisory Committee requests an exception to this limit. Please note that comments received for agenda items posted for action will be read at the time the item is heard. MAG staff, did we receive any public comments?
Mr. Chair, we did not receive any public comments.
Thank you. Our next agenda item is approval of the January 28th, 2021 meeting minutes. Were there any questions or concerns in review of that before we call for a motion to approve? All right, hearing no questions, can we have a motion for approval of the January 28th, 2021 meeting minutes?
Tim Connor, so moved.
Megan Sheldon, second.
All right, at this time, we'll take a roll call vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee, when I call your name, please state your vote. Aye for yes, no for opposed, and abstain, decline from voting. Nancy Allen,
Aye.
Stan Balone,
Aye.
Dave Barry, Benjamin Bitter, Walter Bouchard, Kim Butler,
Aye.
thank you. Derek Castaneda,
Aye.
thank you. Peter Margoliner, Aaron Chavez,
Aye.
thank you. Beverly Chanelski,
Aye.
thank you. Tim Connor,
Aye.
thank you. Michael Denby,
Aye.
thank you. Scott Tobias,
Aye.
thank you. Michelle Kamakawa,
Aye.
thank you. Robert Forrest,
Aye.
thank you. Elizabeth Foster, Rhonda Hummels,
Aye.
thank you. Hondo Judd, Spencer Camps, Martin Lucero, Heather Colson,
Aye.
thank you. Kristen Watt,
Aye.
thank you. Amanda McGinnis,
Aye.
thank you. JC Porter, Mario Saldamando,
Aye.
thank you. Megan Sheldon,
Aye.
thank you. John Sherrill,
Aye.
thank you. Ramona Simpson,
I'm here, or I approve, sorry.
thank you. Susie Stevens, Steve Trussell, Christina Hobbs,
Aye.
thank you. Kai Umeda,
Aye.
thank you. Robert Vondenacker, Michelle Wilson,
Aye.
thank you. Mr. Chair, we have a unanimous vote of approval.
Great, thank you very much. We'll move on to agenda item number 4, which is the updated Maricopa County Travel Reduction Program Ordinance and new Telework Plan option. Kristen Smith from Maricopa County Air Quality will give that presentation.
Hello, members of the committee. Thank you for having us here to talk about the travel reduction program, the plan changes, and our P7. Next slide, please. So as we go through, the travel reduction program has been committed to being very transparent and innovative in our thoughts. So currently, what we've done over the last, I'd probably say since the beginning of the shutdowns and COVID for so about a year now, we've moved all of our documentation to our website, the TRP resources. So on each slide, they have clickable links. So if you guys do have them, please feel free to review them. Then we've also moved all of our employers to an internet e-survey. The e-survey allows for additional and better data collection and reduces paper. We've revised our Maricopa County Air Quality Ordinance P7, and then we've implemented a telework plan. Next slide, please. So in response to COVID and minimizing contact, we transitioned all the employers to the e-survey option. So previously, any employer was able to take a survey, whether it's paper, internet, but we have moved a majority of them. So currently, within our first quarter for our fiscal year 21, for the federal fiscal year, we had 661,427 surveys issued, which is now is 94.90% of all surveys that are internet version. So this conversion greatly reduces the amount of paper waste, has also increased our quality of data because their employees, staff can't just write anything on the form or not fill it out correctly. The internet survey actually records everything that they put, so we're able to get better data collection. Next slide, please. So as a previous supervisor, I'm sure most of you knew Phil Cummings. I have taken over in his position. He, I believe, let you all know that we were going to be updating our P7 ordinance. As of November 18th of 2020, the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors did approve that revision. We went through all the same protocols as a rule replacement and did get stakeholder feedback. Just to give a little update on what was actually changed with that protocol was we removed redundant language from the statute. We incorporated 6 policies that were already being used throughout the program. And we added a stratified statistically significant random response rate, or as we call it, the 3S3R survey option. And we clarified confusing language. So to go back a little bit more, the policies that we had implemented that were already in progress, we just clarified and made it a little bit more relevant to the time. That included making sure that employers made that minimum response rate, and that also changed with that 3S3R response rate. So employers currently now, if they have within a grouping a minimum response rate, they can apply on their TRP plan submission for the next year to survey with the 3S3R options. They'll want to work with their travel reduction plan reviewer during that time process just to make sure that they are getting the correct numbers of the random, because it does need to be within a certain grouping. And then some of the clarifying language was just redundant language from the statute or something we would like to clarify a little bit further. And one of those specifically was the equivalent emissions credits or reduction credits. So we did clarify that. We removed that language and we put it into our TRP handbook. The handbook is in the final stages and should be available to the public on March 1st. Next slide, please. So TRP recognized over this kind of a wild and crazy year, right? That COVID has changed the way that TRP and the travel reduction program does business. Employers are moving to teleworking. Half of them are going back. Some are not even going back to the brick and mortar work sites. So the travel reduction program wanted to make sure that we were accommodating those employers so that way they could participate with the TRP in ways that were a little bit more relevant to their business and making sure that it was easier for them as opposed to making it harder. So for the telework plan, they must meet a minimum requirements. So they will still be doing the surveying like they regularly would. They will be submitting a travel reduction plan. It would just be the telework plan. It's just a alternative option to the standard TRP plan. They will still be completing a plan, implementing a plan, and incentivizing employees. There is also the TRP plan format in itself is set for certain measures. So 4 measures are on the plan. One of those is incorporating those teleworkers. There is a monthly alternative mode drawing, since teleworking is considered an alternative mode. There is a survey incentive to still incentivize those employees to take that survey while they're working from home. And there is also a new measure that we were able to get passed, and that was to give employers credit for the money that they have spent and continue to spend getting their employees to telework, or if they're offering incentives. Some of our employers offer a subsidy for employers, which could be $100 towards their internet bill for home, or they have employer requirements of cell phones that the employer takes care of or pays for their equipment. So we wanted to make sure that all the employers did receive some credit because it was a substantial amount, and we want to promote it to continue the teleworking throughout the departments. Next slide, please. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to take those.
Thank you. Do any of our members have questions?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
this is Mario from the city of Goodyear. I have a question.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much for the presentation.
Oh, thank you.
So many organizations are experiencing a reduction in travel alone rates, and that's been reflected in the surveys. So when the survey results come back, organizations typically get the credit for these large reductions. How is this going to be reviewed or handled when we go back to normal and our travel alone rates increase back to where they normally are? That makes sense.
I think I am. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mario. But so what I'm understanding is the question is, when we go back, now that we had these really reduced SOV rates, which are single occupancy vehicle rates, they're 40% and below. But when we go back to the brick and mortar sites and locations, if it goes back up to 80, what's going to happen to the standard plan? How much money are they going to have to be required to put back in? Is that kind of general? Okay. Yep. So we have considered that. Obviously, that's a big portion, and that's a big concern for not only our stakeholders, but also for our staff too. And we've sat down, because our goal isn't just to, make everybody add more money. All of a sudden you're doing these crazy things, but we really want to create a behavior that is to reduce alternative mode, or to reduce single occupancy vehicle driving. So we're going to review each plan individually, and we'll take in consideration what was being done prior to COVID, what's moving forward, what they did during COVID, and then after. So if an employer was doing all teleworking during COVID when they surveyed and with their response rates, but now they're not allowing anybody, well, that's going to be a big change on how we review their plan. So we are taking each employer and taking it on an individual case-by-case basis.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Okay, great. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
Kristen's contact information is there on that last slide. So, and with that, we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is funding available through DERA FY21 State Clean Diesel Grant Program. Lars Garcia from Maricopa County Air Quality will give that presentation.
Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Hello?
can.
Oh, okay, great. I guess next slide. Are there slides available? Oh, perfect. Okay. First, I want to congratulate the 2020 fiscal year DERA subaward recipients. We put out a press release earlier this month. We're giving money to Cisco Food Services of Arizona to replace 4 Class 8 short haulers. We're also giving money to Phoenix Union High School District to purchase their 2nd electric bus. We're giving money to Cartwright School District to purchase their 1st electric bus. We're also giving money to Whitewater 2 LLC. They are a local distributor of water products. They are a private company. We're also giving money to Avondale Elementary School District for 1 vehicle replacement, a school bus. And also money to Yuma Elementary School District and Yuma Union High School District. And they purchase liquid propane buses. So one of the things we do with the Arizona State DERA program is we focus in areas that have been, I guess, tagged for or classified as non-attainment for ozone. Next slide, please. So Maricopa County Air Quality has been administering this program since 2016. And since that time, we have worked on 85 vehicles. 19 have been upgrades to those engines. 66 have been vehicle replacements. Most are diesel, but if you look at the slide, we're going into liquid propane, low NOx CNG, and electric vehicles at this point, and soon, hopefully someday, hydrogen. Next slide, please. In that 5 years of time, we've reduced 40 tons of NOx, a ton of other pollutants, and we've given out $2.8 million in funding with the local match from the subrecipients, 7.6 million. I do want to point out that these funds include both federal funds and Arizona Department of Environmental Quality matching funds. They match what the EPA gives us every year as a base allocation. And because DEQ does match that, we actually get an additional 50% of funding. So we're real grateful to ADEQ for supporting our program. Next slide, please. So there are 4 DERA programs. There's a national program, a state program, a tribal program, and a straightforward school bus replacement program. The state program, anyone can apply, including a for-profit program or entity. But on the national program, you must be sponsored by a nonprofit or a different entity other than a for-profit. Next slide, please. Most of our equipment is on-road. They have to be class 5 through 8. We also do locomotives and some non-road engines. Next slide. Most are vehicle replacements, but we can do emission control technology. And you would verify what that technology is using a link on the program guide. Next slide. So on the program guide, there is a table that has eligible funding engines. This program is actually administered by the engine model year, not the vehicle model year. So this is the table in our current program guide. It's on page 23. And if you look under the circle there on the left-hand side of the table, it says older to 1995. And if you look across, no, 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 no. So they're saying those vehicles are currently not funded under this program. Next slide. Last month on the national DERA program, if you look under that same line, they did change their program to include any older diesel vehicle. So this is a very important change. We do anticipate that this change will occur on the state level. We expect to have our updated program guide any day now. So we're anticipating no more constraints as far as the age of the old diesel vehicle. Next slide, please. We get a lot of questions about EV charging stations and EV components. Basically, this grant will fund electric vehicles at 45% and what they charge into. So that means the pedestal, the charging unit itself, but not the electricity that goes to the charging unit. Next slide. If you look at the circle towards the bottom of the slide, most of our projects are funded in federal funds, including the state match funds at 25%. Unless they're low NOx, those are funded at 35%. And if it's a zero emission vehicle or engine, those are funded at 45%. Next slide, please. Additional things to consider if you're applying for this program, whether it's the engine or the vehicle, you have to scrap it. You have to drill a hole in it and you have to document it through photos. And then all replacement engines, technology must be verified by the EPA or CARB. Next slide, please. Another important part of this program is meant to get rid of polluting older diesel vehicles, replacing them with a cleaner burning vehicle and putting that vehicle on the same route. So the new vehicle should be driving the same route as the vehicle that it replaces. And you can't go up in a class on your vehicle, but you can go down in a class. And we partner with our subgrantees either through an IGA or a memorandum of understanding if you are a private entity. And let's see, you're required to complete a technical data worksheet for your grant application, as well as through the entire length of the application. I'll cover that in a minute. And we require quarterly and final grant reporting. Next slide, please. Where to apply, if you go to the county's state clean diesel grant program website, you will have everything you need there to apply. Applications are due next month, March 15th. This year, our application cycle is open for 6 weeks. We tend to leave it as open as long as we can to provide technical assistance because it is somewhat of a technical program. And we want your application and your technical data worksheet by the due date. Next slide. This is a slide of our program website. You'll find the application, you'll find program guidance, and then you'll find the technical data worksheet that is due with your application. Next slide. This is what the program guidance looks like. When it is updated, we'll notify everyone that has corresponded with this as far as whether they're filling out a grant application or not, and we'll immediately upload it on our program website. But the only change we anticipate is that legacy years of vehicles going away. Next slide. We do have a PowerPoint presentation on our program website that has specific pages you should read or review on the program guidance document. Because it is so technical, we want to assist you as much as possible. Next slide. And we also include guidance in our application itself. These are a couple of screenshots out of our application. There's links to everything you're going to need to fill out this grant application, including the EPA websites. And if you look at the bottom of the slide, there's a red oval there. This application you can save and resume later, and you'll want to do that. Next slide. Because this is the technical data worksheet, we require a column of data for each vehicle you are, or each engine you are proposing under this program. Next slide. We're requesting the data for the existing engine, the year of the engine, how many miles you drive, how much fuel it uses, the class, all that information. Next slide. We ask you for the new technology, the cost of the new technology, how much fuel savings you will anticipate. Next slide. You will take that technical data worksheet, and if you look at the center of this slide, you're going to enter your current vehicle data on the DEQ, that's the diesel emission quantifier tool that the EPA uses. Because they use it, we use it. So you're going to take that data into your current vehicle data, and then underneath that, you're going to enter the price of your new vehicle, what type of technology you're using. And up at the top of the slide, there is an oval that says quantify project emissions. You're going to click on that oval. Next slide. Next slide, please. Oh, you got that. And then it's going to give you, I'm sorry, go back. And then it's going to give you your, the DEQ is going to give you your emission reductions for both the annual and lifetime span of the vehicle. And you can see them right there, NOx, PM 2.5, and everything else, including fuel. Next slide. You're going to take that information, you're going to enter it into your grant application. So this is the annual outcomes in short tons. Next slide. And then you're going to enter the lifetime results. And then part of your application, there's a link there to upload your completed Excel file with all that technical data information. And then you'll click submit, and you will get a copy of your application that you just submitted. And it will be date stamped. Next slide. And then you're done with your grant application. And then if you want to go to the last slide, this program does take a while to find out whether you're actually funded or not. Applications are due to us March the 15th. We will let you know by the end of May whether your application was included in the total application for the state. We submit that state application to the EPA usually in May or June, and we are not notified until October as far as a grant award. So that's why it does take a while. But projects will start end of October, and they must be completed by September 30th, 2022. Thank you. And I'll answer any questions if there's time for questions, or you can send me an email.
Yes, we have some time for questions. Are there any questions?
This is Derek with City of El Mirage. Lars, are these grants renewed annually, or are they blocked out for a certain amount of years?
So that's a good question. This is a formulary grant. It is based on the population. So we get a certain dollar amount every year, and because we have been running population, we've been seeing anywhere from like a 7 to 15% increase in funding. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. We'll move on to our next agenda item, which is update on the 2022 serious particulate plan for PM10 for the West Pinal County non-attainment area. And Matt Poppin from MAG will give that presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Got a presentation today on the update of our continuing work that's been ongoing for a serious area plan for the West Pinal County non-attainment area. Next slide, please. So just as a quick reminder, the area was initially designated as a moderate non-attainment area back on May 31st, 2012 and effective July 2nd, 2012. The Arizona Department of Environmental Quality prepared a moderate area PM10 plan for that area and submitted it to EPA in December of 2015. The attainment date was December 31st, 2018, but because the area did not attain by that attainment date, in 2020, EPA published a final rule to determine that the area did fail to meet the PM10 standard by the attainment date and reclassified the area to a serious area, which is the current classification. A plan to meet the requirements of a serious area is due to EPA by January 24th, 2022. Thank you. Next slide. So what I want to focus on sharing with the committee today is the process we're going through to select design days that are a part of the attainment modeling for a plan. So the serious area plan must include modeling that will demonstrate attainment of the PM10 standard at all the monitors within the non-attainment area. As part of that, design days are selected, and these are specific PM10 exceedance days that are supposed to be representative of the conditions, the weather conditions and the emission sources around the monitors that cause the exceedances to occur within the non-attainment area. And then what the attainment modeling requires is that those design day PM10 concentrations, which are above the standard, must be reduced to the level of the PM10 standard through modeling of the emission reduction benefits of the committed control measures that are ultimately in the plan. And those emission reduction benefits should be enough to reduce the PM10 design day concentrations to demonstrate attainment of the PM10 standard. Next slide. So the West Pinal County non-attainment area has 8 PM10 monitors in it. The PM10 exceedances at each of these monitors will need to be evaluated as potential design day candidates for modeling. We are looking at the period of air quality monitoring data between 2016 and 2018, as this is the period EPA used to reclassify the non-attainment area from a moderate area to a serious area. But in addition to looking at those 3 years, we are also looking at the exceedances that have occurred in 2019 and 2020 to see what the recent trends are and patterns of exceedances that have continued at each of the non-attainment area monitors. We are looking to prioritize exceedances that have occurred in the year 2017, as this would match the year we're using as the base year for the PM10 emissions inventory, which has been recommended per EPA guidance. Next slide. So looking at the exceedances, we find that PM10 exceedances occur under 3 main types of weather conditions, meteorological conditions in the non-attainment area. The first is under low wind conditions. So this is when we're defining low wind is when wind speeds are less than 12 miles per hour. So in this situation, it's the activity that is occurring at the emission source. There are no wind-blown dust emissions associated with the PM10 concentrations under this meteorological condition. The second condition we've kind of broadly defined as elevated wind. So this is when wind speeds are greater than 12 miles per hour, but less than 25 miles per hour. So the wind speeds are strong enough to cause PM10 emissions from wind-blown dust, but they're not high enough to be categorized as an exceptional event. And then the third category is what we're calling a high wind dust event. These are when wind speeds are 25 miles per hour or greater. This is the threshold that EPA generally assumes for wind speeds to be equated with exceptional events. And the thinking is when the winds are over 25 miles per hour, those wind-blown dust emissions are uncontrollable. So because of that, PM10 exceedances that occur under high wind dust event conditions are not going to be used as potential design days because they would be considered equivalent to an exceptional event. I do want to point out that exceptional event demonstrations have not been officially submitted for this monitoring period of 2016 through 2020 for a variety of reasons. But in general, when winds are above 25 miles per hour, EPA does generally consider those days to be uncontrollable in terms of the emissions and concentrations associated with those days. I also want to point out that just for purposes of categorization, PM10 exceedances can occur under a combination of low winds, maybe low winds in the morning or in the evening, and then an elevated wind period through the day. But just for categorization, we are putting those days in the elevated wind category. And then EPA does expect that design days will be needed for both conditions in order to demonstrate attainment under all possible exceedance conditions. So we'll need design days for low wind days and elevated wind days in order to demonstrate attainment to meet EPA guidance. Next slide. So design days will not be selected for PM10 monitors that are not violating the PM10 standard. So there is some good news in that not all of the 8 monitors within the non-attainment area are violating the standard when high wind dust events are removed. So removal of those high wind dust event exceedances does considerably shorten the list of monitors that are violating the PM10 standard. So design days, specific days to model, will not be selected for those, what we're calling non-violating monitors. EPA did provide us some guidance, some recent guidance actually, on what to do with those monitors. And that third bullet there, EPA says that an evaluation of these non-violating monitors be addressed by describing whether the emissions inventories at each non-violating monitor are expected to increase or decrease, and whether that would affect the future attainment status. So we will still need to look at the emissions around each of these non-violating monitors and discuss the trends in emissions, but we won't have to do specific design day modeling for those monitors. And then lastly, one other piece of general EPA guidance is that in order to show that you are likely to meet the standard in the future, EPA generally recommends that the 4th highest PM10 concentration within a 3-year period is a good PM10 concentration to consider as a design day. The thinking here is that if you can show attainment at the monitor with your 4th highest concentration, that means that would leave only 3, so you would not have more than 3 exceedances in a 3-year period. But that is a general guidance. There's a lot more involved in selecting a design day, as we'll kind of go through in the next slides. Next slide, please. So I want to show you the kind of walk through each of the monitors and give you a status of how they relate to the PM10 standard currently. As you can see, there are 8 monitors within the non-attainment area. The non-attainment area is the blue area. And you can see the entirety of Pinal County is represented here in this map as well. Largely the eastern portion of Pinal County is not a part of the non-attainment area. Next slide. So the way these series of graphics are set up is each monitor location is in the center of the graphic, and this is basically about a 2 to 3 mile radius around the monitor is what you're seeing in this aerial photograph or satellite image. So that can help you visualize what may be some of the PM10 sources located around these monitors, because it is the sources closest to the monitors that often have the highest effect on the monitor concentrations. So this first monitor is the Casa Grande monitor, which is located largely in the downtown portion of Casa Grande. And we have a table up on the left that shows the exceedances that have occurred at the monitors in the years 2016 through 2020. So you'll see there has only been one exceedance in that 3-year period of 2016 through 2018 under low wind conditions, none under the elevated wind condition, and then there have been 11 exceedances when the winds were greater than 25 miles per hour. So this is one of the monitors that we would not expect design day would be needed for. This would be a non-violating monitor because we only have one exceedance under conditions that aren't considered a high wind dust event. Next slide. This is a Coolidge monitor. This is located on the edge of the town of Coolidge, near a lot of agricultural fields. This monitor is unique in that it's a filter monitor, as opposed to the other monitors are monitored hourly and continuously. This one is a 24-hour filter. And there's only been one day where this monitor has actually recorded an exceedance, and it was during a high wind dust event. There are 2 exceedances officially identified with that day because there are actually 2 monitors co-located on one spot. So that's why, even though the exceedance occurred on the same day, it counts as 2 exceedances. But that exceedance was a high wind dust event. There really have been no exceedances under any other conditions. So again, we would not be selecting design days for the Coolidge monitor. Next slide. The Combe School monitor, which is located in the northern portion of the non-attainment area near the boundary with Maricopa County as well, near the city of Queen Creek. This monitor has only had one exceedance. That hasn't been a high wind dust event. This was under elevated wind conditions, so the winds didn't quite reach 25 miles per hour on that day. So again, not enough to consider selecting design days for this monitor. Next slide. The Eloy monitor, this is the furthest southern monitor within the non-attainment area, located in the community of Eloy. A lot of natural desert area to the west that's kind of being reclaimed from former farmland, and then farmland to the east. There was one exceedance under low wind conditions, and the rest of the exceedants were high wind dust events. So there would be no design days selected for Eloy. Next slide. The Maricopa monitor within the city of Maricopa, again, very similar. Pretty much no exceedances. There have been 2 exceedances under elevated wind conditions in 2020, but no exceedances during the 16 through 18 period that we're looking at. So this would be considered a non-violating monitor as well, and no design days would be selected for the Maricopa monitor. Next slide. Pinal County Housing Monitor. There's a very small housing. It's pretty difficult to see on this map, but this monitor is largely surrounded by agricultural sources and some vacant open land. Agricultural croplands. So when you look at the period of 16 through 18, you see there are 5 exceedances that are not high wind dust events. 3 under low wind conditions and 2 under elevated wind conditions. So this monitor is right on the borderline of considering a design day because it is officially violating the standard based on those of 5 exceedances. You can't have more than 3 in a 3-year period. we would likely select a design day for this monitor. The good news is that the trend, though, in 19 and 20 are very few exceedances and even only one high wind dust event. So it appears that this monitor is attaining the standard currently, but because we are looking at the period of 2016 to 2018, we will likely be selecting a design day to be modeled for this monitor. Next slide. The Stanfield monitor will be a monitor that we will select design days for. It is surrounded by agricultural fields, and you can see there are some feedlots and or dairies. Those are those kind of in the far western and far eastern portion of the graphics. You can see those facilities there in those kind of rows. And so there are 6 low wind days and there are 9 elevated wind days. So we will likely be selecting a low wind day and an elevated wind day. So 2 design days from this site in order to show that this area can attain the standard with the committed control measures of the plan. Good news at this site as well is that 2019 and 2020 had a lot fewer exceedances, especially under low wind and elevated wind conditions. So this monitor looks like it may be headed towards attainment as is, but we will need to model design days for this monitor. And next slide. So the monitor that has by far the most exceedances is the Hidden Valley monitor, located here in the center of the screen, obviously, with some desert areas to the southwest, some agricultural fields, and then near the feedlot immediately to the east. This is the same feedlot that you actually saw in the Stanfield monitor. So the Hidden Valley and Stanfield monitors are relatively close together. I think they're about 7 or 8 miles apart. The majority of exceedances occur under low wind conditions at this monitor, with some exceedances occurring under elevated wind conditions. As we'll see, and the exceedances have continued in 2019 and 2020. We have not seen a drop off. 2019 was a pretty relatively clean year, but 2020 has been the worst year so far at this monitor to date in terms of low wind exceedances. So definitely design days will need to be selected for this monitor. Next slide. So in summary, there are 5 monitors based on 2016 through 2018 data that appear to be meeting the standard in Casa Grande, Combe School, Coolidge, Eloy, and Maricopa. So no design days will be recommended for these 5 monitors. 3 monitors are violating the standard based on that 2016 through 2018 period. Pinal County Housing, Stanfield, and Hidden Valley. We will be looking at design days for those monitors. Good news, exceedances in 2019 and 2020 have decreased at the Pinal County Housing and Stanfield monitors. So it appears that those 2 monitors may be attaining the PM10 standard based on 18 through 20 data. However, exceedances have continued at the Hidden Valley monitor in 2019 and 2020. Next slide. So I wanted to show you just for those 3 sites that we will likely choose design day from. I wanted to show you current thinking on what the possible design days would be. So there are 5 candidates for the Pinal County Housing Monitor, and they all did occur in 1 year, 2017, which is good because that will correspond with the base year emissions inventory. 2 of the events were under elevated wind conditions, May 30th and August 30th. And if you can, I know the graphics are small, but they're the first 2 graphics to the right of the text. You'll notice that these, while the winds were not officially at the 25-mile-per-hour threshold, these look largely like your classic monsoon event, where all of the emissions are in 1 hour or 2 hours. So I will say that it is possible that an exceptional event demonstration may be able to prove that these days were exceptional events, even though they don't meet EPA's default threshold of 25 miles per hour. But because exceptional event documentation has not fully been done and likely will not be approvable by EPA because of the lack of controls that are present in the non-attainment area, we're kind of forced to look at these events, even if they do look like kind of classic monsoon days. So we will look at those and see if it makes sense to model those as a design day, but it may not, even though they don't reach even though we cannot officially or preliminarily exclude them as high wind gust events because their winds were not above 25 miles per hour on that day. And when I say winds, I mean sustained winds. The gusts were, but EPA looks at sustained wind speeds, not gust wind speeds. The 3 days on the right are low wind days. The first one in the upper right, October 21st, was sort of a unique event in that it was a transport event. Many monitors across Arizona exceeded on this day, even though the wind speeds were very low. What happened on this day is that the dust was generated near the California-Mexico-Arizona border and then got transported in under lower winds. So that's kind of a unique event, so it would not make sense to probably choose that day as a design day because it's unlikely to occur maybe once or twice throughout the decade, but not something that would occur every year. And then, so we're left with a choice between November 28th and December 1st. We'll likely choose December 1st as the candidate day because it has the higher concentration. So that's the thinking currently for the day that would be modeled at Pinal County Housing. Next slide. Here's some data on the Stanfield monitor. There are 15 candidate days between 16 and 18, 6 low wind events, 9 elevated wind events. The upper right graphic is the graphic for low wind events, 3 of which occurred in 2016, 3 of which occurred in 2017. You can see these events are relatively similar in the sense that the higher spiked emissions occur mainly in the evening and afternoon hours. So because they are relatively similar, it would probably make sense to look at each of these as possible design day candidates. We are still trying to decide which one makes the most sense. We can look at wind direction, which is not shown on this graph, and other factors. One of the factors is, as I mentioned earlier, it makes sense to prioritize 2017 exceedances because that is the year that the base year emissions inventory is based on. But you can see the 2017 exceedances are barely over the standard. The standard is 150, and any day that's 155 or greater is an exceedance. So those exceedances in 2017 were barely over. But likely one of these days, either in 2016 or 2017, will be chosen for the low wind event at Stanfield. Elevated winds, which are represented on the bottom right graphic, there is really no consistent pattern. And that is what you would expect. Each storm system or each monsoon or thunderstorm has a different pattern. And so the spikes occur at different times of the day. This also reflects those combination days where perhaps the morning spikes are more due to low wind conditions, and then the afternoon, evening spikes are due to higher winds. So because there isn't anything very consistent associated with these exceedances, we're still evaluating additional parameters for consideration to see which one would make the most sense for a design day selection. So one has not been definitively selected yet for Stanfield. Next slide, please. Okay, I want to spend a little bit of time describing Hidden Valley because this is the monitor that has the most exceedances. So there are 77 exceedances that are not high wind gust events in 2016 through 2018, 61 low wind events, and 16 elevated wind events. There are 2 sort of dominant seasons when the low wind exceedances occur. There's the summer season between May and August. That's sort of the darker orange bars you see in that monthly graph. And then there's the fall season, September to November. That's the lighter yellow in the monthly graph. And you can see within those seasons, the dominant month in summer is June, and the dominant month for exceedances in fall is October. So we're going to be looking for design days in June and October to choose for a low wind exceedance. What we've also noted is that exceedances are linked closely to the amount of rainfall that is received near the Hidden Valley monitor. When rainfall is less, exceedances are more likely. So we have a graph at the bottom that kind of shows that relationship. So you can see the number of exceedances is on the left, and the amount of precipitation is on the bottom. So as the precipitation increases, the number of exceedances experienced at the Hidden Valley monitor decreases, and vice versa. So this correlation is not as strongly present at other monitors, although it is present as well. But it's certainly definitely linked to the soil conditions at Hidden Valley. Next slide. So just briefly looking again at the low wind days, there is a very consistent pattern of what we see occurring on those low wind exceedance days. That first graph up there shows you that the majority of the concentrations that are the highest are between the hours of 4 a.m. and 8 a.m. And this also is the time of day when wind speeds are the lowest. So the graph on the left, top left, is PM10 concentrations, and the graph on the top right are wind speeds. And you can see the blue bar is the median PM10 concentration. The red line is the 95th percentile of those exceedance days of the PM10 concentration. And then for wind speeds, the gray bar is the median wind speed, and the red line is the 95th percentile wind speeds for these low wind days. There's only, unfortunately, there are no, Hidden Valley did not have wind speed monitors in 2016, so that's why we're only seeing wind speed for 2017 through 2018. Because we are focused on selecting a day from June and October for low wind days, and because there are a majority of it, there's plenty of exceedances to choose from that have a similar pattern, we are going to focus just on 2017 to match our base year inventory. So for June, we've selected June 7th, 17th as a good candidate as a design day. It has that classic pattern of the high spike in the morning and then also somewhat of an evening spike as well. And it is also near one of the highest concentrations. It's the 9th highest out of 61. For October, we're looking at October 7th to choose as a design day, and this is the 5th highest out of 61. So we're just one exceedance day short of the 4th highest, and that 4th highest value is 230. So we're only talking about 1 microgram difference. It really doesn't make a difference modeling wise. But I will point out that these are high concentrations that do need to be reduced to the standard. So we're looking at approximately 35% to 40% reduction in concentrations that will be needed in order to meet the standard at the Hidden Valley monitor on low wind days, which is a lot. Next slide. I'll go briefly on the elevated winds, kind of similar to what we saw at the Stanfield monitor. These days are not really consistent. We do see the morning spike again, but that's largely because a lot of these days still have the low wind period in the morning, and then the afternoon, evening, it kind of varies. So we are still evaluating what makes sense in terms of an elevated wind day at Hidden Valley. If we were strictly just to look at the 4th high, that is 222, and that occurred on August 28th, 2017, out of the 5 days in 2017 that are available. So we're still evaluating parameters for selection of an elevated wind day at Hidden Valley. Next slide. Okay, I just have 2 more slides to share with the committee on where we are with the emissions inventory. I mentioned that briefly earlier. So EPA had recommended to us to selecting a base year between 2016 and 2018 for the base year inventory. to correspond with the 3 years of data they used to classify the area as serious. 2017 was selected as the base year for a number of reasons. That is the year that the emissions inventories were already previously developed for the National Emissions Inventory. It's also the year with the driest year out of those 3 years of 16 through 18 largely, and there are more exceedances available as design days for that year generally. So those were some of the reasons why 2017 was selected. So work is ongoing to develop that 2017 base year inventory, with inputs being developed by Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, Pinal County Air Quality, and NMAG. ADEQ is focused largely on the agricultural sources. Pinal County is working on construction and permitted sources, and is also helping with unpaved roads. And MAG is working on on-road, non-road, and wind-blown dust largely, with some overlap between the agencies. It is expected or is anticipated that the type and magnitude of PM10 emissions in the emissions inventory will be somewhat similar to the 2008 base year inventory that was developed for the moderate area plan, because the emission sources in the West Pinal County area have not changed significantly. Next slide. Just a few more details, and then we'll be completing the presentation. The inventory that's being worked on right now is a daily average inventory for the entire non-attainment area. So this covers the entire non-attainment area, and it'll be a daily average inventory. But I do want to make the committee aware that additional smaller scale inventories will also be developed for attainment modeling domains around monitors with selected design days. So there will be specific domain-based inventories around the Pinal County Housing Monitor, the Stanfield Monitor, and the Hidden Valley Monitors. And those inventories can vary pretty significantly between each other based upon the day that is chosen and the meteorological conditions that are chosen. And they will have to be representative of the design days. So next slide. That concludes my presentation. Appreciate the committee listening to all that information, and I am available for any questions if there are any.
Thanks, Matt. Are there any questions? Okay, not hearing any questions. We'll move on to our next agenda item. Thank you again, Matt.
Yes, thank you.
Our agenda item is the tentative meeting schedule for the MAG Air Quality Technical Advisory Committee, and Lindy will just do a quick review of that.
Yes, we just wanted to mail the schedule out to the committee again. We do this periodically in case there's some proxies that attend or new members. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Agenda item 8 is a request for future agenda items for topics of issues of interest for our next committee meeting. If anyone has any, they can let us know now. If not, they can email those to myself or Lindy. Does anyone have anything? All right, great. Again, just let us know if you do. With that, our business is concluded, and I'll now adjourn this meeting. Thanks all for attending.
Thank you.
Thanks.